Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and it is time for another whiskey tasting. And today I'm going to be doing a tasting of a whiskey that you've probably tasted yourself. However, I like to give a little something extra in the episodes that's something that you may not know. And so I'm going to do a tasting of Wild Turkey 101. This is one of the best value bourbons on the market. Beautiful new bottle, actually, because the last bottle I had did not look like this. This is 101 proof, which means 50.5% alcohol by volume. This bottle set me back, this beautiful bottle, set me back $25. Has a nice little ode to the tax stamp up here. And it says, crafted with conviction, aged longer, and distilled and bottled in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, with a date of 1855. Now, what's cool about this date of 1855 is that suddenly now, because I had a chance to do an interview, all of this really comes home to me. No longer is this just a bottle of Wild Turkey 101, but there's some history here that I'm connected with, and it's part of the reason why I do my Whiskey Lore interviews and my Whiskey Lore Regular Stories podcast, because I think the stories actually bring you closer to the whiskeys that you love. And so I did an interview last time I was in Lawrenceburg with Tom Rippey, who is the senior member of the Rippey family. He's in his 80s now. He can tell you stories about, and he loves to tell the stories, and I so enjoyed interviewing him. He is the kind of interview I really enjoy doing. If you haven't heard it yet, go to Whiskey Lore, the interviews on your favorite podcast app, and look for Tom Rippey, because he's going to tell you the history of Wild Turkey before it was Wild Turkey. When T.B. Rippey was in charge and made it, one of the biggest exported whiskeys in the world, but it was not Wild Turkey at that time. It didn't become Wild Turkey until after the 1940s began, and the name actually comes from a hunting expedition, a salesman out on a hunting expedition shooting wild turkeys, and he had brought some whiskey with him, and so it just picked up the moniker from there. But what's cool about this is that if you go, me as the author of Whiskey Lore's Travel Guide to Experience in Kentucky Bourbon, if you go to Wild Turkey, you'll see my profile here, there is actually a chance that you will get a chance to, I don't know if I put it in here or not. Let me see. Yes, listen, watch for. I heard that legendary distiller Jimmy Russell, who was hired by the Rippeys. This is how long he's been around. He was hired by the Rippeys. Greets guests. So if you go to Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, which I highly recommend, I'll tell you where you go. You go to Wild Turkey. You go to Four Roses. It's right down the street from there. And then you have your choice of Woodford Reserve, which I highly recommend. Or you could go to Glens Creek, which is lesser known, but you get to see the old Crow ruins from the 1870s when that distillery was built. A place that Mark Twain actually went to. So how's that for cool? All right, so anyway, I don't know what days Jimmy's there. I've heard Saturdays, but I have not bumped into him. I was there on a Sunday. I was also there to go buy myself a bottle of Wild Turkey 101 rye last time I was in town, because I couldn't find it anywhere in South Carolina. And then, of course, as soon as I bought it and brought it back, I see it everywhere. So, isn't that the way? It's like buying a car and all of a sudden you see the car everywhere. It's crazy. But all right, so I'm going to do a tasting on this one. This is what we call a great value bourbon. $25 for that bottle. This is 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley. And I love that some of these historic brands, Jack Daniel's is another example, where you get high rye, but you also get a lot of malt in there, a lot of malted barley. And so I think it makes for a less aggressive whiskey. And at 101 proof, this might seem like it would be hot to most people who are probably your average whiskey drinker. Those that love whiskey are learning to drink cask strength these days, but for that person that's just your average everyday drinker, they probably aren't quite as into the high proofs. This actually drinks very nicely. So aged 6 to 8 years, and you can smell it on the nose. The oak is the first thing that steps out and lets you know it's there. 6 to 8 years, so you're kind of getting a nuttiness. I get almost a peanut kind of a nose out of this. I get a hint of like a dark rye there. It's hard to say it's herbally. It's heavier. And I don't know, heavy may not be the best adjective, but it's just like it comes at you with some more gusto and doesn't really have bright notes to it. It's just really kind of, a fist of rye, I guess would be the way to put it. There's a little hint of vanilla in there. The interesting thing with the oak is it almost has a pencil shaving kind of a smell to it. Cheers. It's got all those bourbon characters to it. It's got the vanilla, it's got the caramel, but what's nice is the bit of rye comes in there. It just evolves as it goes on, and then it starts to dry out. It's like you've got a milky sweet middle, not overly sweet, and then it just rolls off to this slightly peppery, it's got some of that more aggressive rye character to it, but it's not overly aggressive. And at 101 proof, it's actually very drinkable, nice on the palate. The oak lingers as well, a little bit of char in there, herbaliness, and maybe a little spice in there as well. Yeah, this is a good whiskey. I mean, $25. And this is where sometimes doing ratings, it's tough because, man, if I say, in the $25 range, this is very good. But in the world of whiskeys, which is how I'm going to judge it, and saying between the greatest whiskeys versus, the ones I'd never buy again, this is a good whiskey. This is a good, solid whiskey. And as I say, this is a great one to have in your cabinet. If you like that bit of rye in your bourbon, this adds that nice touch of rye to it, and it kind of differentiates it from a lot of other value bourbons that you may get. So what do you think? What do you think of Wild Turkey 101? Did I introduce anything new to you that you didn't know before? Always striving to do that as much as I can. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Liking, well, that helps more people find the video. Subscribing actually helps you see more of these tasting videos as I do them. And check out Whiskey Lore, the interviews, and listen to that interview with Tom Rippey. He has such a wealth of knowledge on everything Lawrenceburg, Kentucky from the 40s up. He has seen a lot. He's seen distilleries that have long gone from existence. He talks about Four Roses. He talks about, what it was before then, when it was the old Prentice Distillery, all of that. I mean, so what a life he has had and what he has seen there in Kentucky. So until next time, cheers and Salon Java.